The emergency klaxon screamed through the corridors of Zephyr Station as Captain Marcus Kane pressed his face against the reinforced viewport. The sight before him would haunt civilized space for generations. Where once stood the mighty Andromeda, coalition fleet, 300 vessels strong. Now only scattered debris and dying ships drifted through the void like abandoned prayers. Lieutenant Zara Okoye's fingers danced across her tactical console, her dark skin glistening with sweat despite the station's climate controls. Captain, I'm reading 37 operational vessels remaining, down from 300 just 6 hours ago. Her voice carried the weight of impossible numbers. The void swarm had emerged from the darkness between galaxies like a plague of living shadow. Their biomechanical ships moved with predatory intelligence, adapting to every coalition tactic within minutes. Traditional warfare meant nothing to creatures that fed on energy itself and reproduced by consuming starship hulls. Ambassador Thorn Vextal, his crystalline Andromedan features flickering with bioluminescent distress patterns, stood rigid beside the command station. This cannot be happening. The coalition has maintained peace for 2 centuries. We are diplomats, not warriors. Captain Kane turned from the viewport, his weathered face showing the strain of command. At 42, he represented one of only 300 humans among the coalition's billion-strong membership. Earth had joined the galactic community merely 8 years ago, contributing their small fleet of 30 vessels to the vast coalition armada. General Ashfall, what's our tactical assessment? Kane addressed the towering figure at the strategy table. General Kyrian Ashfall belonged to the warrior caste Drakmori, his scaled hide bearing scars from a dozen campaigns. Even he looked shaken. The swarm's tactics are unlike anything in our databases, Ashfall growled, his voice rumbling like distant thunder. They don't just destroy our ships, they consume them. Each vessel they devour makes them stronger, faster, more intelligent. Lieutenant Okoye's console chimed with incoming transmissions. Sir, receiving distress calls from 12 different sectors. The swarm isn't just attacking us, they're hitting civilian colonies, mining stations, everything. Through the station's massive windows, the survivors could see the void swarm's main fleet approaching. Their ships defied conventional understanding. Organic, curves merged with mechanical precision. Surfaces that seemed to breathe and pulse with alien life. The largest vessel stretched nearly 10 kilometers, its hull covered in what appeared to be sensory organs the size of buildings. Captain Kane closed his eyes, feeling the weight of extinction pressing down on every soul in coalition space. Earth's contribution to this fleet had been modest, 30 ships and crews eager to prove themselves worthy allies. Now those same ships burned alongside vessels from dozens of species who had welcomed humanity into their cosmic family. Captain, Okoye whispered, her voice barely audible above the station's emergency systems. I'm detecting massive energy buildup from the swarm flagship. Whatever they're preparing, it's unlike anything we've seen. The Andromedan ambassador's bioluminescent patterns shifted to deep purple, the color of mourning among his people. Perhaps we should attempt to negotiate. Surely even these creatures must want something we can provide. General Ashfall's laugh held no humor. They want biomass, Ambassador. They want to strip every living world bare and add our technology to their collective. There will be no negotiation. Captain Kane opened his eyes and looked at each face around him. Representatives of 7 different species, united in desperation, facing an enemy that threatened to devour everything they held dear. Outside, the void swarm continued its approach, their alien forms blotting out the stars. Captain Kane's personal communicator buzzed with an encrypted signal he'd never seen before. The transmission carried Earth's military seal, but the encryption pattern was older than anything in current use. As he activated the message, his blood ran cold at the familiar voice that emerged. Captain Kane, this is Director James Morrison, Earth Defense Authorization Omega-7. If you're receiving this transmission, humanity faces extinction-level threat. Activate Last Stand Protocol immediately. Authorization code, Terra 9 Alpha Crimson. Lieutenant Okoye looked up from her station, confusion evident in her expression. Sir, I've never heard of any Last Stand Protocol in our operational databases. Kane's mind raced as fragments of memory surfaced from his early military training. Whispered conversations between senior officers, classified briefings that ended when junior personnel entered the room, strange construction projects on remote asteroids that were never explained. His father, Admiral Robert Kane, had died with secrets he'd never shared. Zara, run a deep scan on our ship's core systems. Look for any hidden subroutines or dormant programs with Terra classification. Ambassador Vextal's bioluminescent patterns shifted to curious amber. Captain, what aren't you telling us? Does Earth possess military capabilities unknown to the Coalition? Before Kane could respond, Okoye's scanner erupted with activity. Captain, I'm detecting massive power signatures throughout our ship's neural network. There's an entire secondary system I've never seen before, and it's awakening. The bridge lights dimmed as ancient protocols engaged across the human fleet. Every Earth vessel in the sector began broadcasting on frequencies that predated Coalition membership. Hidden transmitters activated on asteroids, space stations, and orbital platforms that had been dismissed as mining operations or research outposts. General Ashfall's scaled features twisted with recognition and growing alarm. Those aren't civilian installations. Captain Kane, your species has been building military infrastructure throughout Coalition space for 8 years. Kane felt the weight of his species' deception settling on his shoulders. We hoped we'd never need it. Earth's leadership remembered what happened to civilizations that trusted entirely in others for protection. We learned from human history. The main display flickered to life, showing a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy. Hundreds of previously unknown installations appeared as green dots throughout Coalition territory. Each installation pulsed with active status, indicating fully operational bases, shipyards, and weapon platforms. Lieutenant Okoye's voice carried awe and disbelief. Sir, I'm receiving telemetry from 47 hidden bases. Each one is reporting full operational status with defensive fleets standing by. Impossible, Ambassador Vextal protested. The Coalition monitors all military construction. How could Earth build such an extensive network without detection? Kane accessed files that had been locked away since his commission. We didn't build them in Coalition space, Ambassador. We built them in the spaces between Coalition territories, dead zones, asteroid fields, rogue planets, places your species considered worthless. The communication system crackled as transmissions flooded in from across the galaxy. Voices speaking Earth languages mixed with Coalition standard, reporting fleet readiness and requesting engagement orders. The scope of humanity's hidden preparation became clear as each transmission arrived. General Ashfall studied the tactical display with professional appreciation. Your species has positioned forces to defend every major Coalition world. This level of strategic planning requires decades of preparation. 50 years, Kane admitted. Since before first contact, Earth's leaders knew that joining a galactic community meant accepting galactic-scale threats. On the main screen, the approaching void swarm seemed less overwhelming as red tactical markers appeared around their formation. Hidden human vessels were moving into position, their stealth systems deactivating as they prepared for combat. Lieutenant Okoye looked up from her console with wonder in her eyes. Captain, I'm reading over 2,000 human vessels converging on our position. Some of these ship designs, they're not in any database I know. Kane smiled grimly as he activated the fleet-wide communication system. All Coalition vessels, this is Captain Kane. Earth Defense Forces are moving to engage the enemy. Maintain defensive positions and prepare to support fleet operations. The last stand protocol was no longer dormant. Humanity's true strength was about to be revealed. Space itself seemed to tear open as the first wave of Earth Defense Corps vessels emerged from hyperspace. These weren't the modest frigates and destroyers that had accompanied humanity into Coalition membership. Massive dreadnoughts materialized from the void, their hulls bristling with weapon systems that merged human engineering with technologies borrowed from every Coalition species. Captain Kane watched in amazement as ship after ship appeared on the tactical display. Lieutenant Okoye, are you seeing this? Sir, I count over 300 vessels in the first wave alone. And they're still coming. Okoye's voice carried disbelief as she processed the scanner readings. Some of these ships are enormous. The largest one is reading at 15 kilometers in length. The flagship of the human fleet dominated the center of the formation. Its angular design spoke of pure functionality, with no wasted space for aesthetics. Weapon pods covered every surface, and its hull bore the scars of testing that had pushed human metallurgy to its limits. A new voice filled the communication channels, carrying the authority of someone accustomed to commanding vast fleets. All Coalition forces, this is Admiral Victoria Cross of the Terra Defense Corps. We have assumed tactical command of this engagement. Maintain current positions while we assess the enemy. Ambassador Vextal's crystalline features flickered with rapid color changes indicating severe agitation. Captain Kane, your Admiral Cross is speaking as though Earth commands coalition military operations. This violates every treaty we've signed. Kane studied the approaching human fleet, noting design elements he'd never seen before. Ambassador, those treaties were signed before we knew threats like the Void Swarm existed. Sometimes survival requires new arrangements. The human vessels moved with mechanical precision, forming battle groups that utilized formations unknown to coalition military doctrine. Each group contained ships of different sizes and capabilities, creating defensive networks that could adapt to multiple threat types simultaneously. General Ashfall examined the tactical display with professional interest. These formations are revolutionary. Your species has developed combat doctrine specifically designed to counter swarm tactics. Lieutenant Okoye's console erupted with new contact warnings. Captain, second wave incoming. I'm reading another 400 vessels, including what appears to be mobile shipyards and supply platforms. The arriving ships defied everything the Coalition understood about human capabilities. Carriers launched fighter squadrons that moved like mechanical wasps, each pilot connected to a neural network that allowed unprecedented coordination. Heavy cruisers bristled with railguns that could fire projectiles at significant fractions of light speed. Admiral Cross's voice cut through all other communications. Void swarm vessels, you have entered territory under Terra Defense Corps protection. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences of your actions. The Void Swarm's response came as a pulse of bioelectric energy that attempted to interfere with human ship systems. Instead of causing damage, the pulse seemed to activate additional defensive measures. Human vessels began generating energy fields that repelled the swarm's traditional tactics. How is this possible? Ambassador Vextal demanded. The swarm's bioelectric attacks have disabled every coalition vessel they've encountered. Kane accessed classified files that were now unsealed by the protocol activation. Earth studied every engagement the coalition has had for the past 8 years. We identified the swarm as a potential threat and developed countermeasures for their specific capabilities. On the main display, the human fleet began advancing toward the Void Swarm in a coordinated wave. Each ship maintained perfect position relative to its neighbors, creating overlapping fields of fire that would make traditional swarm tactics suicidal. The swarm's largest vessels began morphing their configurations, clearly confused by an enemy that didn't behave according to their established patterns. Their biomechanical systems struggled to adapt to human tactics that prioritized overwhelming firepower over elegant maneuvering. Admiral Cross's flagship moved to the front of the formation, its weapon systems charging with energy signatures that made nearby space distort visibly. All vessels, prepare for engagement. Show them what happens when they threaten our friends. The galaxy was about to witness humanity's true military potential. The first salvo from Admiral Cross's flagship tore through space like concentrated starlight. The Void Swarm's biomechanical shields, which had effortlessly deflected coalition weapons, cracked and shattered under the impact of human rail cannons firing depleted uranium rounds at 12% light speed. Captain Kane watched in fascination as the human fleet executed maneuvers that defied conventional space combat doctrine. Instead of maintaining formation, the ships scattered into seemingly random patterns that confused the swarm's collective intelligence. Lieutenant Okoye, are you analyzing their tactical approach? Kane asked as explosions bloomed across the enemy formation. Sir, it's incredible. Each human ship is operating independently, but they're somehow coordinating attacks with microsecond precision. It's like watching 1,000 separate battles that perfectly support each other. The Void Swarm attempted their standard consumption technique, extending biomechanical tendrils toward damaged human vessels. Instead of finding easy prey, they encountered ships that had been specifically designed to resist such attacks. Human hulls incorporated reactive armor that exploded outward when touched by alien biomatter. General Ashfall studied the battle with growing amazement. Your species fights like no military force I've ever observed. Each captain seems to know exactly what every other captain will do. Kane accessed tactical files that revealed humanity's secret. We call it distributed command doctrine. Every human captain has access to quantum encrypted battle networks. They're not following orders, they're sharing consciousness. Ambassador Vextal's bioluminescent patterns shifted to deep blue, indicating severe distress. Captain, your species is engaging in mental linking during combat. This technology could revolutionize warfare throughout the galaxy. The battle reached a critical moment when the swarm's massive flagship began generating a bioelectric storm designed to disable entire fleets simultaneously. The attack had devastated coalition forces in previous engagements, creating electromagnetic pulses that shut down life support systems. Admiral Cross's response demonstrated human adaptability at its finest. Instead of trying to resist the bioelectric storm, human ships absorbed the energy and redirected it through specially designed capacitor arrays. The swarm's own attack powered human weapons to devastating effect. Impossible, General Ashfall breathed as human ships began firing energy beams that matched the swarm's own bioelectric frequency. They're using the enemy's power against them. Captain Kane felt pride swelling in his chest as he watched his species demonstrate the ingenuity that had carried them from primitive cave dwellers to galactic defenders. Humans excel at adaptation, General. We've been fighting impossible odds since we learned to make fire. The Void Swarm's formation began collapsing as their largest vessels found themselves under concentrated assault from multiple directions. Human fighters, no larger than shuttlecraft, managed to penetrate biomechanical defenses by using erratic flight patterns that mimicked space debris. Lieutenant Okoye's scanner detected something unprecedented. Captain, I'm reading massive internal explosions aboard the swarm flagship. The human fighters aren't just attacking the hull, they're somehow getting inside the ship. Kane accessed real-time combat footage that showed human pilots performing boarding actions against creatures that had never been successfully boarded. The pilots wore environmental suits equipped with cutting tools specifically designed to penetrate biomechanical barriers. Admiral Cross to all coalition vessels. The human commander's voice carried fierce satisfaction. Enemy flagship is neutralized. Remaining swarm vessels are beginning withdrawal procedures. On the main display, the impossible was happening. The Void Swarm, which had consumed civilizations across multiple galaxies, was retreating from human forces. Their biomechanical ships began folding in on themselves, preparing for emergency hyperspace jumps. Ambassador Vextal's patterns shifted to colors that indicated awe mixed with fear. Captain Kane, in 8 hours of combat, your species has accomplished what the Coalition couldn't achieve in centuries of preparation. The human fleet maintained perfect formation as the last swarm vessels disappeared into hyperspace. Admiral Cross's flagship moved toward Zephyr Station, its weapon systems powering down, but remaining ready for immediate reactivation. General Ashfall saluted Captain Kane with traditional Drakmori respect. Your species has earned the right to lead us, Captain. The galaxy will never be the same. Kane looked out at the stars, knowing that humanity had just announced its presence as a galactic power. 3 days after the battle, representatives from every coalition species gathered aboard Zephyr Station for an emergency council session that would reshape galactic civilization. Captain Kane stood before leaders who had once viewed humanity as primitive newcomers, now recognizing them as the galaxy's most formidable military force. Ambassador Vextal's crystalline features displayed patterns of deep respect as he addressed the assembly. The Andromedan High Council formally recognizes Earth's Terra Defense Corps as the Coalition's primary military authority. We request immediate integration of human defensive strategies across all coalition territories. Admiral Victoria Cross had arrived personally to oversee the transition. Her presence filled the council chamber with an authority that transcended species barriers. The Terra Defense Corps accepts responsibility for coalition defense, but we propose fundamental changes to how this galaxy approaches security. Lieutenant Okoye presented tactical displays showing human fleet positions throughout coalition space. Our forces have established defensive grids around every major population center. No world will face extinction alone again. General Ashfall studied the deployment patterns with professional admiration. Admiral Cross, your species has created the most comprehensive defense network in galactic history. How do you maintain such coordination across impossible distances? Admiral Cross smiled, revealing the secret that would revolutionize coalition technology. General, every human ship is connected through quantum entanglement networks. We don't just communicate faster than light, we share consciousness itself. Distance becomes meaningless when minds can touch across the galaxy. The implications staggered the assembled delegates. Species that had struggled with communication delays across star systems suddenly faced the reality of instantaneous coordination on a galactic scale. Captain Kane stepped forward, his promotion insignia gleaming under the station's lights. As newly appointed Admiral of Coalition Defense Forces, my first priority is establishing training programs for all species interested in learning human tactical doctrines. Ambassador Vextel's patterns shifted to hopeful gold. Admiral Kane, the Andromedans offer our entire industrial capacity to support human fleet expansion. We understand now that preparation prevents extinction. The Council Chamber's main display showed real-time intelligence reports from across the galaxy. Human reconnaissance networks had identified 17 potential threats that previous coalition intelligence had missed entirely. The Void Swarm was only the beginning, Admiral Cross announced, her voice carrying the weight of classified knowledge. Our deep space sensors have detected other hostile forces moving toward coalition territories. Some are mechanical, others are energy-based, and a few defy current scientific understanding. General Ashfall's scales rippled with anticipation rather than fear. With human leadership and coalition resources combined, we can face any threat. Your species has taught us that survival requires constant vigilance, Lieutenant Okoye reported from her expanded tactical station. Admiral Kane, all major species have agreed to the new defense protocols. We're receiving construction requests for human-designed shipyards and training facilities. Kane looked around the chamber at faces representing dozens of civilizations, all united under human military leadership. The galaxy has learned an important lesson. Peace isn't maintained by hoping for the best. It's secured by preparing for the worst. Admiral Cross activated a holographic display showing the completed human defense network. Every coalition world now has human guardian fleets in position. The Terra Defense Corps has become the galaxy's shield against the darkness between stars. Ambassador Vextel raised his crystalline hand in formal salute. Long may Earth's children guard the light of civilization. The coalition places its trust in human hands. As the council session concluded, Kane reflected on humanity's journey from galactic newcomers to cosmic protectors. The species that had once struggled to leave their own solar system now stood as guardians of 1,000 worlds. Outside the Yidam station's viewports, human ships maintained their eternal vigil, watching for threats that might emerge from the vast emptiness beyond known space. The galaxy slept safely under humanity's protection. The age of human guardianship had begun.